For many people, Halloween is their favorite time of the year. It's the one time of the year that people embrace their darkest parts of the imagination and show what might even be some of their true colors. This dark side is often just flaunted in jest, but sometimes it gets taken too far. Here are two genuinely scary but unique stories I found on forums that took place on Halloween. October 1st was always a letdown for me, not because anything particularly bad ever happened on it, but more so that I missed my childhood sense of wonder on Halloween that I had as a kid. I guess you could say I craved it coming back. Anyways, I'm 23 now, I'm in college, and I still celebrated Halloween in college, but it was very different. It was filled with a lot of drinking, and usually a lot of partying. It wasn't at all the same as a childhood Halloween. I wanted it to be joyful and innocent, like it was when I was a kid. Last year, I thought I'd try and reclaim some of that innocence by giving out candy to the local kids. Now, for some background, I go to a large university, and I live in a small middle-class suburb that's pretty close to it. A few of my friends and I rent out a house. Last year, my friends were drinking and going out to a party that night, but not me. All I wanted to do was relax, watch some spooky movies, and make kids' days better. It was almost sundown. I just finished some homework and popped my favorite Halloween movie into the DVD player, Trick or Treat. The movie is an anthology of a bunch of different stories that tie together. Whenever I watch it, it brings me back to that sense of wonder again, and I liked that. I was about 30 minutes into the movie when I heard the first knock at the door. Excitedly, I got up and grabbed a bowl of candy. I had an assortment of things kids might like, some of my favorites from when I was a kid. I had Reese's, Starbursts, M&Ms, and Kit Kats. I opened up the door, and there were two kids. "Trick or treat!" they yelled. I asked them what they were, even though it was obvious. One was dressed up as a ghost, and the other was dressed as a turtle. I threw them a handful of the good stuff, and they were happily on their way. This was the way that the night went for the next few hours. Playful knocking, and me giving out candy and making pathetic attempts at humor, over and over. It was pretty therapeutic actually, and I liked making the kids happy, and I was really enjoying reminiscing with my favorite Halloween movies. I rarely took this much time for myself, and it was great to have the peace and quiet. There finally came a point when there had been about 45 minutes since the last knock on my door. It was nearing 10 p.m., and I figured it was way past the bedtime of most kids. I was thinking about closing up shop and calling it a night on giving out candy, when out of nowhere, a large but heavy thud rammed against my door. I nearly jumped out of my chair. Was this some college kid playing a prank? I figured so. I know, I'm a college kid too, but mostly I keep to myself. I don't cause much trouble. I got out of my chair, grabbed the baseball bat we keep by the door, and I walked over to the door. I peered through the blinds over the side windows, and I couldn't see anyone. I opened the door, stepped outside, and looked around. It was very dark at this point, and I couldn't see very far into the night. I thought about yelling, but I knew if I did, I'd just be giving them exactly what they wanted, so I yelled, "Happy Halloween, guys!" and I threw some candy on the front doorstep. I figured leaving that there would be a nice positive way to tell them to fuck off. It had been about 15 minutes since the loud thud, and I figured my attempt had worked. I had shut all of the lights out and closed the blinds, so any sign that anyone was home was absent. I didn't expect anyone to think I was home at this point, let alone prank me. Trick or Treat was in its final scene. The little boy that played the spirit of Halloween was in the process of fighting an old man. It was cheesy, barely suspenseful, and did little more than intrigue you in hopes of finding out who the boy actually was. The actual fight wasn't particularly riveting. Then, again though, I heard the loud thud on my door. I didn't jump as much this time because I almost expected it. I got up, I paused my movie, and I walked to the door again. I didn't waste any time. I stepped outside immediately, bat in hand, and I got into my front stairway looking around. But what the hell? Nobody was there. These kids were fast, I thought. But then I heard the thud again. Shit. No wonder I wasn't seeing anyone. It wasn't coming from my front door. That thud was coming from the backyard. This scared me. Our neighborhood was nice, and my front yard was well lit, but the back of our house faced a forest, a deep forest, and on all sides of our yard we had a fence. It wasn't a small thing either. It was a good 8 feet tall, and it had sharp points at the top. Jumping over it would have deterred a lot of people. Whoever got back there must have put in a lot of effort to do it, and they couldn't just be jumping back and forth over. They've been standing out there for a while. I went back inside and I turned on all the lights, including the spotlight in the backyard. I looked around for a few minutes and I didn't see anybody out there, but just before I called it quits, I saw it. A large man, probably at least 6 feet tall, just standing there, staring out from the darkness in the very back of my yard, right at me. He didn't budge when I saw him either. He just stood there. I went back inside and I went to my closet to swap out my bat for something a little bit more intimidating. I grabbed my roommate's rifle and I went back to the backyard. I opened the door, walked a few steps out into our porch, and I yelled, "Look, I don't have a clue who you are, but you need to leave. I'm going to call the police, and when they get here, you'd better be gone or you're going to jail." I walked back inside, slammed the door forcefully, and I dialed 911. I told the man on the line there was somebody in our backyard. While I did this, the man started walking towards the house though. It started slowly, just as shuffling, but as it progressed, it turned into what were nearly strides. At this point, the police said they were sending an officer right away. I got off the phone with them, comforted slightly by the fact that I'd have help here soon. Just as this happened though, the man stepped into the light on my porch. He was wearing a hockey mask. He had menacing eyes, and in his right hand, he had what was undoubtedly a knife. Even though he saw me holding a rifle, he walked without reservation all the way up to my back porch, and he slammed his left hand against the door. While he looked through the side windows at me, he kept doing this, just staring at me. Now the next part is going to sound ridiculous, but I swear it happened. I raised my rifle and I yelled, "Get off my property now, or I swear I'm going to shoot you." He didn't budge. Fuck it. I shot straight through the window and I hit the bastard right in the neck. He fell to the ground and yelled. I rushed to the window holding my gun, ready to use this situation to my advantage, but when I got to the back door, there was only a small patch of blood where he landed. I swear to God, there was just a blood-stained sheet, the kind of sheet you'd see a little kid throw over himself with the eye cutouts on Halloween. But nobody was in it. It was just lying there, all by itself with a tiny blood stain in it. The police arrived a little while after this happened. They took samples of the blood from the backyard, and they took the sheet to go look at it. They even scoured the backyard and the forest behind us for the knife the man was holding. They told me they'd keep an eye out for people entering local hospitals with gunshot wounds for the next few weeks, and they would let me know if they found anyone. Shortly after this, my roommates finally got home from the party, and I told them the situation. I was glad they were back, but I was pretty confident the situation was resolved. It would have been a huge undertaking for someone in that shape to come back and try anything. After a few minutes, I went to bed. I was settling in, I turned on my lamp and I opened up a textbook to do a bit of reading before bed, when I leaned against my wall and I felt something wet. Up against the wall next to my bed, there was a small, caked, obviously coagulated layer of blood just up against the wall. I screamed, and I ran outside of the house and I called the police. My roommates left too, and we waited outside until the police came. When the cops showed up, they searched the whole house and stationed a patrol car out front for the next night to watch over us. But their search of the house yielded nobody. This was the last we heard of this for the next few weeks. We eventually got a call back from the police, and they told us they had a match in the DNA. It was a match to a man that would have been in his 90s, except this man was dead. He died 25 years ago, in this exact house, in a drug deal that went bad, on Halloween. My roommates and I jumped ship with this one. We found a new place about a week later, and we moved out, taking the financial hit. I have no clue what went on there, but it scares me to death in hindsight. I don't know if it was some sort of hoax gone wrong, or if I actually saw a ghost. It was about 6:30 p.m. I had a night class every Wednesday this semester, so I was heading back to campus. It was late fall, it was cool outside, and it was genuinely beautiful. The leaves had all changed, which made for some astounding scenery, so I decided I should walk to class so I could wind down a bit. The class started at 7 p.m., and as it turned out that year, Halloween fell on a Wednesday. That's right, I was the lucky bastard to have night class on Halloween. All of my friends were going out to party and dress up, but I had to sit here listening to classical music while an old man lectured us on how great it was. Don't get me wrong, classical music is awesome, but that was not the night for it. My priorities were elsewhere. Anyways, as expected, we didn't get out early, and as a matter of fact, we got out almost 10 minutes late. It was well past sunset at this point, and pretty chilly outside. As I walked home through campus, I could hear the sounds of young adults playing the parts of ghosts and ghouls. I had no part in that though. It was my last semester of college, and more than anything else, I just wanted to focus on graduating. I didn't have time for drinking, let alone having much fun. My apartment was a good 2-mile walk away, about 40 minutes. I was almost a quarter of the way there when I heard rustling in a bush. I thought it was probably just some kids having sex or making out or something, so I brushed it off, but as I approached it, one of those goofy-looking horse masks slowly rose out of it and turned to face me. I laughed. Nice mask! As I walked by the guy in the mask, I gave the nose a gentle tap. The person in the mask didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me, following me with his eyes as I walked on. I chuckled to myself at how of all of the masks someone would use to scare someone, they would choose the horse mask, and then I felt a tap on my back, like something ran into me. At first, I thought a large bug might have flown into me, but I turned around to see the horse mask still staring out of the bush, and a container of Smarties lying on the ground. I looked at him. "Did you throw this at me?" Again, there was no response. I shrugged and I said, "Well, thanks I guess." I picked up the Smarties, started eating them, and walked on. With that, I walked away. I didn't want to deal with that guy anymore. It was a bit creepy, but playful at the same time. I didn't quite know how to respond to that behavior. Anyways, I was about a mile down the road. I was probably 10 minutes from home at this point. I was crossing a well-lit bridge to the other side of town. This side of town wasn't quite as nice as the other one, but by no means was it ghetto. It was just a cheaper place to live, mostly filled with manual laborers and college kids. As I was approaching the end of the bridge, I saw something. Well, more like someone. It was a person about 6 feet tall, my height, but their face looked contorted. Their face became more clear as I got closer. It was another guy in another mask. This one was more menacing. It was a werewolf. The first guy was funny, but when I got close to this one, it started to freak me out. I got close and the man raised his hand and I said, "Look, not tonight, man. Some dude in a horse mask hit me with some candy. I'm just not feeling it. Have a good night, though." Again, there was no response. I wasn't sure if this was the same guy freaking me out or a new one. Then I felt it. 1, 2, and then 3 bumps against my back. I turned around, looking down, and of course it was more candy. Some M&Ms, a Tootsie Roll Pop, and a Reese's cup. At this, I looked at the guy and he was just staring at me. I turned around and I took off running. I ran to the point of losing my breath all the way home, and when I got back, I told my roommates about what happened. They laughed at me getting scared about it though. They commented, "It's Halloween, of course someone's gonna throw candy at you." But I knew that being singled out by those two, or one, I wasn't sure. That couldn't be something innocent. But it was late, I was tired, and I went to bed shortly after. I had class the next day, and I couldn't afford to have any fun. At about 3 a.m. though, I heard something light at first, but it was followed by a heavier noise. Was it tapping? As I woke up, I gradually became aware that this tapping was at my window. This didn't make sense though. I was on the 2nd floor. I turned on the lights, pulled up my blinds, and I saw a small piece of candy on my windowsill. It was a package of Smarties. Nothing happened for the rest of the night, but the next day, when I was getting ready to go to class, I opened up my door, and in front of my door, there was a pile of candy.